With all the stuff I've been putting out as of late, I must look kind of different being on this side of the camera instead. So anyways, I want to start off by wishing everybody a happy new year. We've made it to 2025 and we're still alive. So, this update video is going to be a little different as it's hard to say if I'm going to be able to make one of these for a while, so I want to try to cover a lot of different topics, which I guess the first one on hand would be the fate of my surgery coming up. Well, if all goes right, it should all happen at the end of January. Still trying to hammer out a few details, though. So, it's quite fascinating that it's a little nerve-wracking, but not in the way that you would think. There's so many people that are like, ooh, you're going in for like a major reconstructive surgery. Are you nervous? I'm not nervous about the surgery itself. I'm just worried about how much of it is going to be covered under insurance. Is the date that I set several months ago still going to be the case? Are the accommodations that I have for staying within a 50-mile radius of the hospital still going to be there at the time? So far, most of it is pointing to yes, but, well, there is also the last test that I have to run to just make sure that I'm healthy enough to go under for surgery. As this will be my third one, I'm not too concerned, but, well, you never know. Every time you get older, you get a little bit more unhealthy with each passing year. Kind of a grim way to look at it, but, well, that's one of the reasons why I want to try to get this done as soon as possible. Well, that, and that just means I have more time to spend in a body that makes me really happy. That's been happening a lot lately. Every time I imagine what my life is going to be like after the surgery, there's just moments of it doesn't take much. It just makes me really happy. And I remember that was a bit of an interesting discussion I had talking with a coworker about this, and he brought up a pretty good question. It's like, well, how is your life going to change after this surgery? I wanted to try to spare him from the details, as I find if you talk about the details of this surgery to cis men, it's disturbing to them. It's just kind of hilarious because if they're like big muscle-bound people, you could just see them go, oh gosh. But I honestly think it was a good question, and before you think that this was said in an offensive way, it was more of a curious way. And I wanted to obviously spare him all the details, but really the main thing that's going to be different, other than how I use the bathroom, is, well, things are just going to feel fantastic. I don't have to worry about jingling so much. I can wear the clothes I want to, and I don't have to worry about trying to hide it when I get excited. But more importantly than that, this is something I've wanted for a very long time, even before I knew it was even possible, and, well, the anticipation is killing me. But I mean, that's really the simple answer to the question, is I'm just gonna be happy. After all, I've gotten small tastes of it here and there, just kind of seeing myself in more feminine presentation. I mean, I had no idea how much fun long hair was going to be, that I could actually look in a mirror and be like, you know what? I look great. And I feel even the same way, even if I have like a bout of food poisoning, or if I just feel like I've been ran over by a truck, I can still lazily hobble over to the mirror and be like, oh, it's you. I like you. A lot better than the last person I used to see. It's just such simple things these days that bring me a whole bunch of joy. So I figured that was the most pressing matter out of the way. Now, on to other things that I picked up this month. So I guess a big question that's going around the trans community is, do you want to be a woman, or do you feel like a woman? I do like a fair bit of philosophy here and there, and I figured I would take a bit of a crack at it. Well, I'd say it's more that I want to be a woman. I know what I feel like, but I really can't discern if these are the feelings I have of a man, or a woman, or just simply somebody that's living in the human condition. People say that I lust for men. Well, what about lesbians? People say that I would have a good sense of fashion. But yet there is a very large number of men in the fashion industry. Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Aeropostale. There are a lot of men in the fashion industry. So I'd really say it's not so much about feelings of the man or a woman. It's just more about the idea that I've been held up to the scrutiny of both. I mean, when you're a man, you have to constantly prove your masculinity, otherwise you're given the label as gay, which is somehow given a more feminine connotation. I'm not really sure as to why, in all honesty. And when you're a woman, you're held to a very high standard of beauty. But you can imagine how difficult that is. I used to look like a man, which is considered the antithesis of beauty. But then again, there are a few people that are starting to kind of sway me from that particular way of thinking. I mean, I'm by no means a K-pop fan, but it's rather fascinating to see men with more traditionally feminine looks to them, and this honestly confuses me. As for feeling like a woman, the only times I can really think about is when I am recognized as such by complete strangers that don't know my situation. I feel a lot prettier than I used to, which is considered a more feminine quality, and I have a lot more confidence in the way I look, the way I feel. But I don't really think that belongs to one gender or another, in all honesty. I guess it's really more just the idea of how I am perceived. Which I know is not really the best way to look at things, because everyone's just like, no, you should have confidence in yourself. Your confidence should not come from how other people look at you. But, yeah, I'll admit, I'm not necessarily the best follower of this. Because I feel like it doesn't really mean a whole lot when you have, like, your best friends or your family, people that want to see the best for you, accept you as who you really are. But what do I look like on the outside? And, well, at this point, it feels like I'm male unless proven otherwise. Although there have been a few exceptions, but, I will admit there were some of those interactions that I'd rather have been misgendered. So for Christmas, I got a gift card to be able to get some new clothes. And I'm not really sure if it's much of a stereotype or whatnot, but I'm rather content with what I have in my wardrobe. I like to have a few more casual dresses laying around. But one thing I've been wanting to try to get more of are skirts. There's quite a lot of discussion about the whole skirt go spinny thing, and, well, I'm not really sure if I've really felt a whole lot of magnetism towards that. And it's also a bit of a stereotype that a lot of trans women wear skirts, so it helps hides the thing that we'd rather not have. At least I'd rather not have. There are some people that are perfectly fine with having that, but, well, you do you. Personally, I'm just like, get rid of it. I never wanted it. But generally, I find skirts very vulnerable. I guess I just always think back to that famous Marilyn Monroe scene where she's just walking over New York City when all of a sudden a gust of wind uplifts the skirt. And, well, for me, I don't want that to reveal my shame. However, the skirt I did pick up, well, let me show you real quick. This may be a bit of an awkward angle, but whatever. So, yes, I really love this skirt because I've just always been a big fan of military surplus. And I love that this is made out of canvas. I was always a bit of a clumsy person. I trip over things, I would drop things, and well, military surplus was meant to last out there in all the wars and everything, so if it could survive that, then it can survive my day-to-day clumsiness. But really, the main thing I love about this skirt, I figure there's a bit less of an echo over here, it's just the idea that, well, it seems like there is this idea that in changing genders, you have to kind of lose who you used to be. But this shirt, as well as the skirt that I'm wearing, have proven that I really don't have to compromise myself at all. I can be feminine in a way that feels very authentic to who I am. I love classic cars. I love military surplus. Olive drab. In fact, I remember well, hopefully this isn't too personal, but I remember picking up some underwear that was in a camo print. And dang it, I love it. And I think this has really started to put me a little bit on a more philosophical path, so I may have discussed one of my favorite manga. It's called Oni-chan is Done For, although I've heard some others refer to it as Onimai, I Am Now Your Sister. I'm not really sure what the actual name is, but the basic premise of the story is that there's basically this, I think the term is neat, basically somebody who is way over their 20s, graduated college, but has not left the house in like 6 years, so their younger sister figures the way to try to integrate him back into society is to turn him into a junior high school girl. And what really drew me into this story at first is the idea that he actually loves being a girl but is just too proud to admit it. It did kind of lose me from there, but it was very much carried by the idea of the eccentric cast of characters, as well as just him enjoying the life that he built, rather than just that of somebody slowly rotting in their parents' basement. The main reason I bring that up is because now I've got a whole different perspective on the manga. It's after you get past those initial chapters of him being too stubborn to say that he really likes this, is the idea that, well, it feels like gender plays a very big part in how we identify ourselves, our identity. But yet I think this main character, Mahiro, as well as me, have realized that your identity can still exist regardless of what gender you are. In fact, well, there are gamer girls. I like video games, as you can tell. It's all about the idea that you can be who you are regardless of what society tells you you are. I hope you understand what I mean. And it would maybe seem like I'm kind of talking down on the idea of like, hey, we need to abolish gender. No. No, I do not agree with that statement whatsoever, because I had to do a lot of fighting to be recognized as female on all of my legal documents. And dang it, I don't want to just throw all that progress down the toilet. I like the label as female, and I want to use it whenever and wherever possible. I saw a rather interesting video last month. It was about the idea of passing. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'll use myself as an example. Passing basically means that, well, every time I would leave the house, regardless of who sees me, I would be gendered as female more often than not. This is unfortunately not the case for me. And I always just go into a spiral of going, what in the world am I doing wrong? Is it because I have a deep voice? I'm trying to work on that, but this isn't easy. How could it be possible that people just see this grotesque growth and it's just like, oh, well, that's obviously a man? Or maybe it's because I have curly hair. It seems like most people think I'm a rocker rather than a woman. Even though my sister as well as my mother has the same exact hair, and yet they're gendered correctly and not considered rockers. But really the main question that the video brought up is the idea of, would you transition if you knew you were never going to pass? I mean, the answer obviously would have been yes. That was never really my goal when it came to transitioning, is I didn't really care how other people saw me. I just cared about this gross body that I just simply couldn't take anymore of. So if I could see myself as female without clothes on, that was my goal. That's all I needed. In fact, for a while, I'm just kind of like, I don't really need a new name. I'm perfectly fine with the old pronouns. But then as I got further along, it really started to get to me. It felt very much like nobody was going to take me seriously if I didn't go for a more feminine name. And on top of that, it's one of those things that when you start transitioning, you realize all those little things you put up with, you don't have to do that anymore. I didn't necessarily hate my dead name, but I was definitely not over the moon about it. Every time I'd hear it, I'd be like, ugh, yes. But now whenever I hear my chosen name, I'm just kind of like, yes, I'm here. What do you want? I like my new name, and I love to use it whenever and wherever possible. Although I will admit, sometimes it doesn't make any sense. Like, for instance, I'm playing a game where there's only like a male character, and it's just like, hey, what is this character's name? Julia. I digress. It's one of those things where the further along I get, the more being misgendered really hurts. I see a beautiful woman in the mirror. I feel like a beautiful woman. At least, I guess. I'm kind of going back to that bit of philosophy I started the episode with. But I just can't understand what it is. Why do people see me as male? Maybe it's because I have all these, like, white dots under my eyes. They call them Millie offhand. Or maybe it's because when I smile, there's all these wrinkles. Maybe I've got a very intimidating jawline. Or maybe it's just because, even with all the laser hair removal I've had, there's still a little bit of stubble on my face. And there are some days where I just can't get all that close to it. It could be a lot of things. I've driven myself crazy over it. And you know what? It's a combination of, okay, I wish I could be gendered correctly, but at the same time, it's just one of those things I have to grin and bear it. What would be the point in correcting a complete stranger? Odds are I'm probably not going to see them again for the rest of my life. And on top of that, it's usually one of those things where I'm just kind of so struck back by it, by the time I kind of recover myself, the person like already walked away. So for instance, I'll be like at a grocery store or whatnot, and they'll just be like, "Excuse me, sir." And I'll be like, and by then they're already out of earshot, so I'm like, whatever. So another manga that's one of my favorites as well, it's called Until I Become Me. It is something that is still ongoing, and a recent chapter just dropped, which I felt brought up another bit of philosophy. So I guess to just kind of give you a basic summary of what the story is, so it's the story of a small boy named Akira. Basically wants to be a man's man. And the best way he can think about doing that is tormenting every single girl he comes into contact with, especially one from his elementary school. Well, one day he's subjected to a divine punishment where he comes down with a non-contagious disease called sudden idiopathic sex change syndrome. And basically he has to figure out how to be able to live his life as a girl now. So he tries at first to live in his regular elementary school as a girl. But well, he is subjected to the same tortures that he would put on to all the girls at the school. And that's a bit of a important moment in that chapter, is the idea that all the girls are just like, don't expect us to help you, or, well, we're waiting for our apology. And obviously, being the man's man, he's just kind of like, no, I'm not apologizing to you. He has to move to another school district. And from there, he basically just has to start up a new life. But he still has a very hard time letting go of being a boy. He wants to be the man's man. However, along the way, he kind of realizes that being a girl isn't so bad, and he even starts to like it. But what this new chapter is about, it's another character from another school district that has the same disease as he does. I'm not really sure about the whole pronouns thing. It's a little up in the air whether he still wants to be seen as a boy still or still be a girl. But for most of this little review, I'm just going to be referring to him as he. He meets up with this other girl in the same situation as he is. However, the major difference is when the disease struck this other student, I think I'll stick with he here as well. He was in the 5th grade, and by then he had a long history of being the man's man. In fact, the story is he was gonna go to a big soccer game to be able to beat the other team because he was a star player and whatnot. Well, wouldn't you know, the day before the game started is when he became a girl. He still competes in the sport, basically saying, you know what, perhaps if I get this goal, I can go back to the way I was before. But obviously that was not the case. But really the key difference is, instead of Akira, who basically had to start his life all over again just as a girl, he had a lot of good friends by his side. He had a very supportive family. And they were alright with treating him as the man he wants to be, but just with a female body. And in fact, he helps out the girls at his school immensely. So, in the school Akira goes to, there's the typical sailor uniform, they call it. So, it's a basic button-down shirt, handkerchief, skirt, and shoes with tall socks. This other student, though, he went for a much more gender-neutral uniform, which is something that the girls loved, as they felt like the skirt was something that was very insecure, that it was something that the boys could just whip right up and see exactly what they wanted. But instead, the new uniform is pants and a regular button-down shirt, and then shorts in the summer. In fact, that's the thing that very much strikes Akira right away, is while she had to basically become a woman, she looks exactly like any other female student. Long hair, wearing the sailor uniform, has like a very high voice, and everything else to that capacity. While this other person, not so much the case. They have very short hair, and they have just a very masculine look to them. At least as masculine as they can get because they're biologically female. And the main point of philosophy I think that's brought up here is the idea that the longer you have that training of one gender, it takes a little bit longer to be able to go along with another gender. Which, wow, this is a really weird thing because I feel like I'm kind of betraying some principles I have. Like I was saying, the idea that I can still be me, but just as a woman instead. But yet here I'm saying you have to figure out how to get rid of that old masculine urge to become feminine. I guess this is a bit of an oxymoron that I live in. And it just kind of makes you think, if we just kind of made our identities just our identities, regardless of what our gender was, we could just simply be ourselves without having to be held up to a certain level of scrutiny. But anyway, I figured that was a very interesting chapter to discuss. Another big thing I hear in a lot of trans media, a lot of people would say, why couldn't I just be happy the way I was? Kind of saying, like, transitioning is hard and whatnot. This is something I've never related to myself because I tried everything. It didn't really bring me a whole lot of joy, but yet the first day I started transitioning was more joy than I ever felt in my previous identity, and from there it's just been getting better and better. So I guess the big thing to mention is it's not so much that I really loved myself, but I never really hated myself. It was really just contempt. It wasn't until I really started to explore what my gender was that contempt started to turn into happiness. The best way I can really describe it is whenever I looked in a mirror, at the worst, I'd be like, ugh, not you again. And at the best, I would just kind of be like, eh. But ever since I started transitioning, more often than not, when I look in the mirror, I'm just like, yes! I'm not really sure if I had much of a point there. I guess I just wanted to throw my own perspective on that particular phrase. So, there is one last thing I want to do before concluding this episode. It was a bit of a fun tier list that I saw from another trans YouTuber. I'm going to put a link to her original video because it's a bit of an old college habit. Always cite your sources. And it's a tier list of things that bring trans femmes euphoria. And I figured I would just kind of throw my own interpretation of it. So, let's jump into this. Right, sorry to give a preface for this. Might as well just jump right into it. So, we start off with our first pick. Smooth skin. As someone that grew up with a lot of skin issues, this feels like a miracle, so hard S tier. Nail polish. This is something I really love. It's amazing how that little splash of color can just do so many things. It's not only very feminine looking, but I find it also strengthens the nails, and I've started to find that long nails can be kind of a superpower, actually. So, let's put that in S tier. Trans culture. Oh boy, how in the world do I describe this one? Well, I guess I'll just start with the basics. Celeste, it's a good game. Blow high, cute and cuddly. But other aspects of trans culture, ugh. To me, it feels like going to a country that has a cultural police force. Now, what does this mean? So, a lot of people know about a regular police force that's all about, like, enforcing standard laws, like, don't be stealing other people's stuff, don't be killing people, or other such really dark things that everybody agrees is wrong. What a cultural police is, it's basically like if you're exhibiting any sort of outside influence that the country does not like, or if you have something that's going against what is considered morally right in your culture, then this police system is going to have a few things to say to you. To go with this metaphor even more, trans culture very much feels like they add rules every day. And on top of that, some people just be offended because you're wearing the color purple, and they have a very bad association with that color, so now nobody's allowed to wear purple again. So for that, I am putting it in D tier. And I know just by doing that, I'm going to upset the mob. And that is precisely the thing I hate about trans culture. It's a mob. It's like how some people can say a really bad fandom can ruin a good property. Take like Rick and Morty or Portal for really prime examples. I think it's a very similar thing here. It's a good fandom. But yet the fans are just nuts. At least the ones I bumped into. It's one of the reasons why I'm not part of a support group. So to kind of go off the whole nail polish thing, Long nails, as I said, is fantastic, and nail polish is just the cherry on top of that very same thing. Looking down femme. Well, if I get a view like this, then, yeah, obviously S tier. Accidentally misgendering. Ugh. I don't know why this is on here. Who wants that? I mean, I have yet to be purposefully... It's very difficult for me to be purposefully... It's difficult enough for me to be purposefully gendered, let alone accidentally misgendered. No, that is awful. Estrogen.
Yes, more please.
Being called cute. Yeah, it's not very often I get compliments on my appearance, but when I do, it hits like a truck in the best ways possible. Thigh highs. What is that supposed to be? Ooh, I mean, what does that particular symbol supposed to mean? I don't know enough about this internet culture. It gets a little weirder with each passing year.
The highest I have ever experienced is knee-high socks. And here's definitely my big piece of advice, is if you're gonna wear tall socks, you need some sort of garter, because they will not stay up on their own like regular ankle-high socks. And I guess while I'm on that subject, I never understood the people that liked socks without ankles. Personally, I feel like the sock needs to protect you from the shoe. And a sock that's the same size as the shoe will just dip down and it won't protect you from it. So I'm not really sure where exactly to put this. I mean, in theory, I would love to wear them. But, I've yet to find them. It's not necessarily something you can pick up at a local store real easily. So, A tier?
Dresses and skirts. I love dresses, but I just feel too exposed whenever I wear a skirt. I'm gonna split the middle and say A tier on this one. It would be S tier if it was just dresses, and maybe B tier if it was skirts. But since it's both, I figure right in the middle is just the right place. Being called a good girl. Just being called a girl in general is enough for me to just set everything on fire. Jewelry.
As you can tell, jewelry is just not something I really wear. I mean, I like this ring. I've always loved rings, and I like wearing watches. But that's really about it. Although if I were to ever go to a formal event, it'd be nice to have like a very simple necklace, but that's really about it. I love jewelry, I just don't really wear it. I feel like it could be a little much at times. So, probably A tier.
Being called a sister. I'm not really sure where to put this one, as I don't think I've ever really ran into this before. But yet, how would I feel about being called a sister? Maybe like B tier, I guess. It's not really all that special to me. I don't think it's nice, but I'm not going to get as excited as somebody calling me a good girl or cute. Skirt goes spinning. Like I said, with the whole skirt thing, I feel too exposed. B tier. Female slurs.
Maybe it just speaks to the men I've had in my life and what ideal I was supposed to hold up for being a man, but I always found that either best friends or family would use some of the most grotesque and disgusting language possible to describe each other. For instance, I feel it's very common for good acquaintances that are male to call each other bastard, and I had a very similar experience. I had a good friend of mine that used to refer to me as bitch, and it was something I found very validating. It felt like I was one of the girls, but in a ways that wasn't demeaning, like, well, I grew up in the era of, oh, you swing like a girl, or if you're seen as too feminine, you're called gay. So here, I felt like I could be a woman, but in a way that was masculine. So for me, I like it.
Chosen name. Well, if I was talking about my birth name, it would be E tier because, yeah, I didn't like it. It had a bad association, and even before I knew I was trans, it just made me feel all kinds of ugh. So, chosen it. S tier. It makes me happy. A haircut.
This is probably one of the more unique things about this list because, well, I think a lot of people associate going to a hair salon as the same thing as going to a spa. You go there to have people just completely pamper you. Now that is an easy S tier for me. I love that people want to be nice to me and that I can feel very much like a princess. But as for getting a haircut, it's a really difficult thing for me because I had to keep my hair really short all of my life. And now that I can keep it long, I'm just like, what? No, you're not touching my precious hair. I've spent way too long growing this. But it is something that's starting to lighten up a little bit as I did go to a haircut recently, and it was nice because not only was it a bit more organized, but it still feels very long and healthier even. So it's a bit of a complicated one. I'd probably put it in an A tier.
I'm gonna guess this one was just put here so you can have something you can put in the D tier. I could maybe see how some people would see that as validating, kind of this idea of like, oh, well, only trans people feel dysphoria. But it is awful. It's basically the equivalent of having a fantastic day. Like, you woke up bright and early, you're excited to face everything, you had like a nice day out, and then you have to go to the grocery store, and then somebody just completely punches you in the gut, and then you're just doubled over in pain out of nowhere. Who wants that? Titties.
Well, pretty much the same explanation as estrogen. Yes. More, please. It's so nice to have them, especially after just dreaming what it would be like to see what it would be like to experience such a thing. And, well, I don't have to dream anymore. I'm awake, and I'm living the dream. Being hit on. This has only ever happened twice in my life, and I find it rather crazy that both of them happened once I transitioned, once I became a woman. And both times they were by people that were old enough to be my dad. First time was just insanely creepy because the guy just wouldn't leave me alone and wanted me to have his business card. Second time was real sweet. It was basically just at the gas station when the next guy a few pumps over is just like, anybody tell you look gorgeous today? And I just like, not yet. See, now that makes me happy. But the other one is about as bad as dysphoria hitting me. So, just a halfway in the middle, I guess. Maybe in the future I'll have more good people hitting on me than bad people, but since it's 50-50, it's really muddling my thinking.
Being referred to as a girl, even though I'm not part of that conversation. Like, it's the idea somebody else is talking about me and referring to me as a girl. Well, if this were to happen, it would be absolutely fantastic. But, no, actually, it probably has happened a few times. But if it did happen, wonderful. You're short. Well, I stand a little taller than the average woman, but not by much. So that would honestly be a little bit of a compliment. Well, that, if there was another woman looking down at me saying that, I'd just be like, marry me? So, probably B tier, I guess. Long hair.
I absolutely love it. It's so validating. It feels fantastic. But there is one major drawback. Whenever I'm eating, more often than not, it'll either be one hair or a clump that'll get in the middle of my food, and that doesn't taste very good. But more importantly, I'm just kind of like, okay, where's this hair been touching? What am I eating right now? But everything else,
childbearing hips. Um, well, I mean, it would be kind of worthless as it's not really something I can do, nor would I want to do if science ever gets to that point. But I would love to have some hip action. At least like Shakira, you know, having some hips that don't lie. But having any at all, it's been wonderful. So, probably A. Anime girl gifts. I'm not really much of a gift person, in all honesty. I mean, I guess I like seeing them, but using them, not so much. It just takes a little while to hunt them down, and I want to try to stay away from the standard ones. Like, this one I have seen everywhere. If anybody can tell me the name of that anime, I'd be very impressed. But, probably B tier, I guess. I'm just kind of like, eh. Reading trans stories. I find them incredibly addictive. Very hard to put down. Just like my favorite book, The Shrugged. So, yeah, S tier. Nature walks. I feel like this whole touching grass thing is overrated. Not to be like I never go outside, it's just whenever I'm touching grass, I have to mow it, and it is the most unpleasant ordeal I have to go through. But going on a walk through nature, well, if it was wintertime, S tier. If it's springtime, D tier. I don't know who wants the bugs, the rain, the pneumonia, the generational PTSD that reminds me of all the people in World War I. And it's absolutely disgusting. Fall is pretty nice though, if it's not raining. So, probably A tier, as it's kind of somewhere in that area. Drawing myself.
I'm not really much of an illustrator by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a very good story to share about such a thing. This was at about the time I was looking for treatment, basically to try to get on HRT so I can start my transition. It's a process that once you realize that there's a cure, it cannot come fast enough. And so, one of the things I started to do was just imagine what I would look like as a woman. And so I drew a few pictures, and I was just so overcome by emotions that I started to cry at it. The idea that this could be me. But there was also just that emotion behind it saying, is this even possible? Are a whole bunch of people conning me into thinking that this is real even though you can't achieve such a thing? But that picture was very important. It not only reminded me for sure that I was trans, because just the mere imagination of seeing myself as a woman was enough to elicit such an overjoyous response. At the same time, it did kind of take away a few things a little bit. As I was saying, the cure just couldn't come fast enough, and realizing that I could feel that much joy as a woman, even just for a brief moment in time, it just really made me want transitioning even more. So for that, I'd very much say S tier. It may not be a very good drawing, but it gave me the idea that I could be beautiful as a woman. And I am.
Playing as a girly character in games. In all honesty, I think it really just depends on the game itself. I recently been playing through some of the LEGO Indiana Jones games. Half-Life 2. Cuphead. These are ones where, well, except for the exception of Cuphead, where you're playing as mostly male characters. And it was something that I could get just as immersed in as if I was playing as a female character. Although I will admit, it would be kind of nice to play some of my favorite games just as a female character. But then again,
Fine, my favorite game of all time is Perfect Dark, and you're already playing as a female character. But, well, I guess I'd probably put it in A tier. It's something I like, but it's not something that I need to have. Although it would be fun. Especially with all the support for the Half-Life 2 modding scene to, I don't know, maybe just reverse the roles so you get to play as Alex and then Gordon is the one that saves you. But then again, I don't really think that'd make a whole lot of sense in the canon. Well, maybe you just play as a different female scientist instead of Gordon. But then again, that's not going to take away from the fact that it's a fantastic game regardless. You should play it. Asked for gender. As I mentioned, it very much feels like I'm male unless proven otherwise. So, if someone were to ask me what my gender was, I would consider that a really good consolation prize. It means people that I appear too feminine to be seen as masculine, but at the same time, I guess I would appear too masculine to be seen as feminine. But if I'm at least somewhere in the middle where somebody wants to ask me rather than just assuming that I'm male like so many other people in my life, that would be great. I would love to be able to just tell people that. In fact, it'd be nice if I could just get like a little name tag or something basically saying, yes, I am a girl. I want to be treated as such. Then again, I'm not really sure how other people would react to such a thing. Whatever. But on the whole, I'd say A tier. S tier would be if I was able to pass more consistently than I am, but you know what? I'd say that's the second best option. Being referred to as a wife. Well, it'd be nice if I went on a date, at least. I mean, I wouldn't mind being part of a power couple of any sorts. But, yeah, I would love to be a wife as well as whoever my actual wife would be. So, probably A tier, I guess. I still don't really know about this whole marriage thing. I've maybe heard like 50 arguments against and maybe 2 arguments for. So I wouldn't really know if that's the right thing for me. But it would be nice to have somebody to share the bills and the chores with. Assumed girl online. If I was assumed anywhere as female, it's S tier. That one mirror angle. I hope it doesn't feel like I'm bragging or anything, but I feel like I don't need just one mirror angle. For the most part, just seeing me makes me really happy. The only time I don't like looking at myself in the mirror is when I get out of the shower. I'm just like, okay. I feel very much like the art critic from that one SpongeBob episode. It's just like, oh, this is perfect. Oh, but this is the only flaw. Ah, much better. Now this is fantastic. And that's all I can see is just that one flaw. But that won't be a problem for too much longer. So, yeah, I'm putting the mirror angle in S tier. Femme voice. It's kind of a double-edged sword because it's one of those things where occasionally I can come up with a really good femme voice, and sometimes I hear it back and I'm like, you know what? This is absolutely fantastic. I wish I could speak like this all the time. And then there's other times where I feel like it sounds very good. And then it sounds like this in the recording. And then that just makes me all kinds of depressed. So I guess if I had a passing femme voice, or at least a femme voice that made me feel valid, S tier. But on the whole, it's really halfway in between. But I think probably one of the worst things is I feel like I'm putting up a really good femme voice, and then someone on the video call just doesn't have headphones on. When that echo comes through, it's like tiny knives just ripping my heart open. I think B tier would definitely be something good. A cute VR chat character. I'm an old-fashioned person. I refuse to use the word avatar.
Unless we are talking about the James Cameron movie or The Last Airbender. It is a character, not an avatar. I have yet to ever play VR chat. However, if it's kind of like talking with real people that own any other social media platform, I'm sure it's about 50-50. You might run into some good people that might make you laugh, make you feel happy, make you feel excited to come back. And then you run into other people that are just absolutely miserable and they suck the soul out of you. Pressing B tier just for it. Headpats. Headpats kind of goes back to that other friend that used to refer to me as bitch. They were a pretty big part of my life. They were the first person I ever met that called me beautiful. And they were the first person I ever received a hug from that it felt nice. Physical touch was something that I never wanted. I felt like I was being attacked. If anybody touched me, I'm just like, no, get away from me. I don't like this. And I think it didn't help that whenever I would go to any sort of family outing, it was customary that I had to hug every single relative before I was allowed to leave. There was never love behind it. It's about the same as two businessmen shaking their hands before agreeing on a business deal. That's all it was. Business. There was never any emotion. There was never any kindness behind it. But yet this person, I felt that love and I felt that kindness. And I think what really helped is the idea that they asked if they could hug me. And I found consent with hugging is something that helps out a lot. And they were also the first person to give me my first head pat. They loved my very thick curly hair. It was just nice the way they would run their hands through it. It made me feel like a very cute girl, and they made me very happy. It is something that can still make me happy even to this day. But I haven't received a good head pat since I had to cut ties with them. It's a long, painful story, so I'll spare you the details, but head pats, absolutely wonderful. The feeling of long hair on my back. This is one of the things I love about taking a shower, is being able to take off my shirt and then just feel that nice long hair gently caressing the top of my shoulders and my back. It's very validating and it's very comfortable. So much better than facial hair, which felt scruffy and painful. It's so soft and bouncy. I had no idea hair could feel and look this nice. S tier for sure. Acting girly in games. Well, I guess it's about the same thing as acting girly in real life. This is a difficult one because about all I do that's really girly in both is I just like to flirt. So for instance, I'll have like a friend that's just like, says the shirt look okay? I'm just like, oh, you look beautiful in that shirt. You should love it. I guess that's considered girly because I just kind of grew up with the idea that men had to be more like, yeah, you know, that's a good shirt, it suits you. Like even just saying that much, it's just like, is there a feminine side to you? Are you gay? So, probably B tier, I guess. Sports bras. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody thinks that diamonds are a girl's best friend. No. Sports bras. They're absolutely fantastic. Not only are they comfortable, but they provide great support, which is something that I really love, as I have always been a runner. And all that jostling around, now that I have a chest, is like the only drawback I've had to having a chest like that. Not only is it something that is very validating for me to wear, but it's very comfortable. I can do the stuff that I want. And on top of that, on a really hot day, that's all you need to wear for a shirt.
And I've done that on several occasions.
Eyeshadow. Okay, when it comes to makeup, all I have to say is, who has the time? Maybe it's just because I'm the kind of person that takes a long time to wake up after I sleep, but most of the time I'm just dragging myself to put my clothes on, let alone to paint my whole face, and in such a way that doesn't make me look like a clown. It's too much effort, and I feel like it's not really something that looks that good on me. And I feel like just some basic foundation to cover up some of the wrinkles and the impurities in my face is perfectly fine. So I'm putting that under B tier. Being one of the girls.
It's kind of nice to feel like you belong, especially when you feel like you've been an outsider for a very long time. I've had a few girl groups here and there, and they've accepted me as one of the girls as if I had been born that way. It's a beautiful thing. And on top of that, we have a lot to talk about, as we've all lived through the female experience. Although I will admit, some of them get a little jealous, as there's a few parts that I just didn't have to deal with. Like catcalling, for instance. It's just not really something I've experienced. I've been hit on a few times, but nobody's ever whistled at me. Nobody's ever tried to touch me or tear my clothes off in any way. But we were able to talk about several things. And it's especially nice when you're with a girl group that has very similar interests. It's basically my big thing. I was talking about if I ever ran into a tall woman that said, "You're a little short." If she was also big into gaming, I just proposed marriage probably right there on the spot. I'm just like, you're the girl I've been dreaming of all my life. If we could share the idea of anime, video games, action movies, yeah, I think that's my ideal girl. And even if she doesn't tower over me, we're roughly about the same height, that'd be nice. And you know, if she kind of has like that whole goth girl aesthetic. So yes, that is absolutely fantastic.
So, yeah, that is my tier list. I'd be very curious to hear if you would have changed a few things around and whatnot. I am sure I'm going to get some issues for this, but I've already explained my case. That's all I can do. I don't want to live in fear of just having a different opinion and then other people just trying to do really bad things to me to make me agree to something that I don't agree with. That's why I'm transitioning in the first place. Is so I can be what I want to be, regardless of what other people say I need to be. But yeah, everything else, I'd say it's in its proper place. Well, as I mentioned, it may be a while before I'm able to do another one of these progress videos, but I hope that this one will hold you over while recovering. Until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.